So there is page object factory and there is page object pattern, right? Page object factory in Java Selenium, page object factory, actually page object model. And let's look at it real quick before we dive into our own page objects. Um, so what they do is basically there is a structure that you follow, right? So you got a home page, you got sign up page. So for each page, there is different tests, right? So any task that belongs to the specific page, you're gonna be creating um, the name as this, right? Then you have the setup, which also going to be differently for, let's say, so this is the setup, central setup for all of them, but let's see. The methods was going to be having page by page methods. So all the method that belongs to a specific page, it will belong to its own class. Okay, and then let's see. So this was done in TestNG, seems like. Okay, so notice like object browser stack sign up page. This class has a method called enter full name, and the only thing you pass on is the name. But everything else is taken care by this method. This method is a custom method, and this method is something that you created. If you follow the page object pattern into this class, and you're calling it, and you're using it, you're gonna see nowhere it says find elements. It's because all of that is inside of this method. Okay, and that is the idea, right? You basically create methods that is reusable. Now, this method, why this is reusable is because it takes a parameter. The parameter is a string. So because it says enter full name, so it'll enter a full name to the field. But what name is entered is up to you. So whoever is using the method, it's really up to them what they want to put in here, right? So it becomes highly reusable at this point. So that is the idea here, guys, that we're gonna do today. So page object pattern will probably help you to organize your tests as well, but this is also gonna be a little bit messy to you because up until now, we wrote test cases into the same exact file, right? We haven't touched anything else. So this file has not been elsewhere, right? So like Cucumber is where we probably touch two files to write the test cases. We have step definition, but now we're gonna say, okay, these belong somewhere else. Okay, these belong somewhere else, and so is this one, and we're gonna basically go ahead and do that. Also, like we can basically decide to have this locator living somewhere else as well, depending on the page by page cases. So any questions on page object before we dive in? I guess the question is, do you guys want me to create the framework from scratch and then do the page object, or this is fine? Because again, the only difference the last time we had on our running issue is because we got a version of Cucumber that was not compatible with the setup that we had. Other than that, have you guys tried this framework yet?
If you install it again, it will be really helpful.
Okay, so we'll do that. But have you guys tried? Somebody got stuck or anything like that?
I,
Yes, indeed.
and the problem is when I was doing the coding, it's like three scenarios. It's like two was pass and three they didn't find. It's like undefined.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I tried to. I see the glue and everything,
Mm-hmm.
was good, but I could not solve it.
Okay, so let's go ahead and create it from scratch because, like I said, Cucumber framework, we always had these issues where the version, if we have a different version of Cucumber, it actually behaves differently, and we want to make sure that everybody's up and running. The other thing we will do probably after today's class, make sure you get all of that set up, and then wherever you're stuck, that's where I'm going to try to help. I'm going to sit down to make sure that for you everything is working and you're able to create test cases. And then yeah, so let's do that. And then again, like the page object part that we're going to cover today, just try to, even if it's not going to be part of the homework, so at least setting up will be part of the homework. All right, so first we're gonna click on new project and we're gonna go ahead and give it a name. So Cucumber. So this time I'm just gonna give it a new name, BDD automation directory is empty. Okay. Okay, so this is our name, Java and Maven. OpenJDK 18, this is just came with the IDE itself. So I'm gonna click on create. I'm gonna click on new. So in the new one, as you can see, as soon as we get there, we have a bunch of things. So I'm gonna click next, next, next. And go ahead and close this. This is just the tips and tricks. Right here, we have Java class. So this is where we're gonna be creating in this folder, but pom.xml is something that we need to update. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to Google, where I'm gonna write IntelliJ. IntelliJ Cucumber BDD, right? And let's see which one they gave us. So the second link, right? So just look at this link real quick, because we should all follow the same thing in order to be able to be on the same page. So here, if you go down, and it's talking about that in the setting, there is a plugin, right? Gherkin Cucumber. So you have to install Gherkin, right? Switch to install tab, right? So plugin, first thing you need Gherkin, second is Cucumber for Java, and then Cucumber for Groovy option. So we don't really, this is an option, we don't use Groovy, so we'll probably not do that. But let me read that real quick if we really need the Groovy. Install this plugin if you want to create step definition in Groovy. So we don't intend to do that, right? We're not intending to do that. Groovy is a bit more, I would say, confusing. It's not hard as Java. Okay, so Cucumber and Gherkin is something that we need, right? So let me just make sure that I have this first of all. This is not the framework. Okay, this is the framework we just created. Yeah. You click on plugin Cucumber, and the Cucumber Java is already installed, so I don't have to do that. Gherkin is already installed. Okay, so both is done. I'm gonna go back to plugin and try to see if anything other than I want to click on install. So I got Gherkin Cucumber, and then a bunch of other things are installed. So in case if you want to have them installed as well, but this will be recommended to you when you use IDE, then you can just click on installing automatically. You don't have to search and look for them. So that first portion is done, right? Plugin. Why do we need plugin IDE is because we want to make sure that we can run our test directly from IDE. We will create runner files, guys. We will create runner files. So just hang on to that thought. We're gonna also show you how to run without IDE, right? Add Cucumber library. It says to go and get the 6.11. So in this dialog specify, I just don't know why they're choosing specifically 6.11, but that is also pretty close to the newer version anyway. So we're gonna get that, right? So maybe in repository. So I'm gonna go to that real quick. So I'm right here. Cucumber, Java, 6.11. It's right there. Okay, so I'm just getting exactly the setup process for IntelliJ at this point to avoid any sort of issues. That was the first one. Second is the Selenium. Selenium Java. Let's get the one that is the most stable. That's the one we have been working with for a long time. Okay, and then we can get test ng or JUnit. So JUnit should be fine for now. 4.1.3. I hope that is the one. Let me just go back. Yep, that is the one. So I'll get this one. It seems like being used by a lot of people. So okay, so got everything installed. I'm gonna go ahead and refresh this real quick. Okay, so once I did that, notice there is no other files and folders. So initially when you create the framework, there is a specific file comes in with it. It's gone because it realizes that we're basically adding our dependencies as needed. If it's not, if it's still there other than any other files, like so anything different than this one, you can go ahead and delete as of right now. Okay, so now we got the pom.xml is all good. So now let's see, we need to go ahead and create our feature file. So I'm going to click on new and then notice like how we have sub step feature and we're able to go ahead and add them, right? So we can do it right from here, but first I'd like to create a package and I'm going to say like BDD test or something like that. I don't know, test. So I did that. And then again, this is really, really up to you where you name it. So I'm going to say first test again. And then if you click on it, you can see that not only that it will create the feature file and it will have the icon, it also gives you the steps, how the step should look like. So description of the steps is right here on the feature level. And then scenario goes with each scenario title. And then we write our step definitions. So given, let's say I am on the insurance page. So this time we'll probably do what we already did before. Insurance application page, for example, like login page or whatever is the case. We'll modify this, but let's see if this steps works, then we're good to go. Again, when you click this and create a definition, the only thing that I would say, if you create it for the first time, it'll create some weird step, right? It's really not, let's see, let's create it. So this is what's happening, right? This is how it created, which is not the way that we want, right? So if you just go ahead and right click and listen to the recommendation, you see what happened. It's just not really happy, right? So we used to work this ID used to be able to do that, but now it creates some really, really weird ones. I think it's probably doing it in a way that Cucumber itself is not liking it, or we just don't have the right version of Cucumber. But either way, the other recommended way is that you just click on run right there, and it gives you a dry, right? It gives you, this is called dry run. So it does give you the template of this specific step that you would like to create. The other thing also, like if you've joined for the first time and you want to write Cucumber step, so you can also like Cucumber step writer helper, right? There is a plugin which I believe I don't need I don't basically don't use that, but there are people that I've noticed started using in order to write Cucumber syntax, right? So let's see, given, so you see right here is one option that you can look into, but there is a plugin actually that helps you. So as you can see, even like other projects, you can even look at it in GitHub for other people's projects and how they were able to write those steps. But that's not something that I was looking for. Let's see, Skull Chrome, maybe Chrome plugin. Okay, Tidy Gherkin. Okay, Tidy Gherkin. Okay, let's see. Add to Chrome and let's see what it does for us, because again, this will be my first time using the plugin as well. So it's just like Selenium IDE. There is a plugin for Gherkin. Where is this go? Okay, there we go. Open anyway. Boom. So enter your Gherkin here, and then it will then, write the steps and everything. Okay, Ruby steps, JS steps. So you can say, I visit home page, Java steps. Okay. So enter that, generate your Java steps here. See your generated Java steps here. I wonder where is the oh, there is another one. Okay. But either way, these are some extensions and tools that you can get help if you are not able to write, but I think it's more complex as going through another tool. You can literally just do a dry run and be able to get the similar template. The code you have to write regardless, because it's never going to be same. You can probably use the Selenium IDE as well to get the code, but you still have to think about the format. You still have to think about where you're going to keep locators, where you're going to keep the actions, and so on. So now that we have the template, okay, so we're going to take this template and we're going to put it into a step definition file. So we're going to have to create one. In this case, it already created for us, right? So we can just go ahead and reuse this, right? Reuse this class, and we can just paste it like this. And this one needs to be imported, given. Okay, so now it seems more like it. So if I go in here, you see automatically this drops, right? So that's good. So it kind of understands this specific format. Once I'm done, I can now say something like system.out.println. And this is just to make sure is that, Cucumber is working. So we go in here and notice we haven't done glue or anything yet, right? So just know that we'll probably do that in a minute. So still cannot find it. That's when we need to think about the glue. And then let me just look at the version. So this JUnit has a test scope. We need to have this have the scope and everything, guys, because okay. Okay, so Cucumber is working. Okay, so if you don't have the test scope, that's when you're gonna you'll basically see that your Cucumber must have scope to test in order to make it work. Okay, that was the problem, and I think when I look at the documentation, did we copy correctly? Hold on a second. Probably. Okay, let's see. Oh, we got it from Maven repository. Maybe that's why. But the major difference between here and over there is that this needs to have a test scope, and in order for us to right click and make it work. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And that was the problem to begin with. Okay, so now that I know that it's writing it, Cucumber is working, I can now start to write my code. So here I can write my code. But before I can write my code, I can think about inheritance. I can think about creating a class that will hold our driver, and the driver we will just call it here. The method we will basically call it here. So how many people remember inheritance, guys?
So inheritance is a parent from where we can inherit, we can inherit the method, which
Okay. So we have parent child, and we can call objects if we need. We have to create objects, um, and be able to reuse, right? Because now any of the classes that needs that specific object, they can just use the inheritance to call it. So that's something that we can do here. So for example, here I can just create a Java class, for example, and I can say, like, let's say, give it a name, maybe like driver utility, right? So something like that, driver. So this is a driver class, and in the driver class, I can already specify what I want, right? And okay, obviously this is outside, so we can probably put it outside as well, but we'll reorganize that. We're gonna put all the classes in here, right? And then we're gonna call it. But for now, we'll just make it here. Once it's done, we'll relocate them. So in the driver class, the first thing first, we have to make sure that we create method, right? So public void. So when we create a method, we can choose to have parameters, right? That means we will be able to pass on something. That way, this method is reusable, right? And that's the important thing about the Java methods. And the reason why we create methods is because we want to make sure that it can be used again, right? It can be reused. But if you create a method and it doesn't have anything, and it's static, doesn't even make sense to me, a method, that's the question that you should be asking. When you create method, you also have the ability to say public, private, protected, and those you use this access modifier, you use them as needed base and as where needed base, right? What you're trying to do. But in my case, it's public because I want to use the driver from everywhere I can find. So just keep that in mind. And then, okay, so now let's create the driver real quick. Any question regarding method, guys? Do you guys need any refresher? Do you know how to create method? What goes after void if I'm creating a method?
is
Hmm?
oh yeah, and the method name and the parentheses, I think, for
Yep.
creating method.
Yep. So now I can say like, okay, I'm gonna give it a very basic name because so that way nobody's confused. So browser. So because we want to have our driver, right? So driver contains browser. So let's say for each browser we have separate driver, right? So so for example, this browser is Chrome browser, right? So I can say Chrome. And then we have Firefox. We'll create another method for Firefox. So any of our tests wants to run in Firefox, we can call that if we want to. We can even have this method takes parameters. So like browser and then type. If the type is Chrome, then only then do this, right? So string type, if type is equal to Chrome. Oh, what am I doing single quote for? Okay. Lowercase Chrome, then do this, right? Then if it's Chrome, but if it's, you know, so now we're just not only like settling with right this, and then else is this, right? So notice the right away, our method is not just gonna do one thing. it will do multiple things, right? Um, you will be able to select a specific browser from this method by saying what you want. If you don't say anything, it will automatically select something for you. And that's the last one else. So here, if it's Chrome, then we want to say, let's see, WebDriver first create. WebDriver is equal to new Chrome driver. So because you're doing Chrome driver, and then we need the browser, sorry, driver utility where actually create a local variable, blah, blah. Okay. So WebDriver should be outside. WebDriver driver. Okay. So we do need the okay. I think this needs to be outside. So driver class. So because it'll go ahead and the return type will be this. We're gonna change this to return type, right? So it'll be public WebDriver and then yeah. So we'll do that. But 1 second first. Yeah, we gotta go to maybe repo. WebDriver manager, remember? And we used to do it from scratch in the beginning, right? So you have to remember both because remember it's not about finding the right tool, but it's also about knowing both ways. So if your team end up using that specific way, then you can still be able to work. Okay, so once that is done, okay, and then I'll just go to the home page real quick to see the for Chrome driver what they do they have a homepage somewhere? Okay. Homepage. So homepage will always give you instruction and setup and things like that. So, and that's what you wanna. So you see scope, they even have test scope. So I wanna make sure because somehow Maven repository is not giving you the test scope, and it has been problematic, right, for us. Our framework not working properly because of the scope. Okay, so that's done. The driver manager, and it says Chrome driver setup. That's what we need, and then we're good to go. Right? You see, driver is equal to new Chrome driver. That's it. That's all we need to do. All right. Go back to this. Import class. We did that, and then that's it. Driver is equal to new Chrome driver. Right, and this actually, if we put it outside, if we put it in here, WebDriver driver, okay, that's fine. Opening, closing, okay, opening. Closing and else, okay. So like by default, it'll be Chrome driver, right? So let's say return driver. Now it's going to be upset, right? It's going to say, what do you mean? 1 second. All right, so as soon as I had returned, something happened, right? And it's already like upset. It's saying, oh, you're saying void. Void means no return. So do you want to do something? So we're gonna make a return, right? So we're gonna change that. The return type will be WebDriver. So it will return WebDriver based on the type that you are providing, right? So just keep that in mind. So now if you have something else, like let's say I'll say Firefox, if this is equal to Firefox, then what happens, right? So now driver manager, we're gonna say Chrome driver setup, but we're gonna say now Firefox setup, right? So Firefox dot setup, right? And then we can do the same thing. And line variable, blah, blah. Okay, so we can think about removing inline variable, but for now, not Chrome driver, it's gonna be Firefox. Firefox driver. And then again, like anything else will be this, so that way we have some ways to, you know, somewhere basically I'm removing inline variables because variable is used when we have more than one usage. Here you just have a single use, so it's better to be this way. So notice that we create a method. The name of the method is browser, and the browser will pretty much no, we don't need the return. No, okay. So browser will then, because the return belongs to each one of the control flow, right? It will, you will not see two running. As soon as this is false, it will not even go into the code itself. So it's not going to be a collision between the returns. Now, these browser method takes something and then give you something in return. Okay. If you put something like gibberish, it doesn't have this name, exact name, it will still return you a Chrome driver. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Let's see what to replace this with null or equal. Okay, so now type, we have to think about in Java, right? We can equal doesn't actually work in Java, unfortunately. So I keep making that mistake myself because I come from other languages that have this feature. So we have to do it like this, guys. Okay. Um, so this is the way you're gonna be. This is the way you're gonna be comparing. Okay. Otherwise, it's never gonna be equal. The right usage of the equal, double equal in Java is that if you want to also identify the location in memory where that object is, it not only compare the, you know, type, it also compares the location. So that's why it was going to be fail and it was going to go to else all the time. So now that we have the driver method created, we can go back to our tests and stub definition. And the first thing first, we need the driver to be called here. So if I do extends and I do driver, okay, and now I can create a driver instance. Okay, so how do we create a instance, guys? Tell me. If you guys used inheritance before, and I want to create a driver object within this class, okay, so I can use it, what do I have to do? So first I extend it, right?
And creating object.
Okay, how do I create that?
With the class name.
Okay, so you're saying driver.
And then the object name.
Okay, so lowercase driver, because that's your variable, is equal to new driver, right?
Yes.
Okay. So now that you have it, you can say right here, instead driver, because this belongs in the same, right? So driver dot, you see browser just came popping right there. And now you can say, okay, what do I need? I need Chrome. I need a Chrome, right? So notice like you're able to do that. So now you can actually, okay, so you just call that, you can actually put it outside because all of your steps can reuse this Chrome driver if you put it outside, or you can put it inside. It's really, really up to you. So you can say something like, okay, this is, okay, no, you cannot call it from here, sorry. So you have to basically create the instance variable. So you can say, to WebDriver, and then you can say, like, let's say you want browser again. Like, it might be very confusing the way I'm naming things, but it's just, I'm just naming. Okay, so now browser is equal to this. Okay, that's it. So now browser is available for any other steps to grab and use, right? So that's just one. So it says, okay, Chrome driver, okay, we can say browser is working. And then after that, you can say browser, right, dot get, right? So as you notice, like get method is still working because the browser type is WebDriver, right? So in here, I can say that, okay, now I need to go ahead and get something, right? I can go ahead and put the URL. So let's go ahead and find the URL, which is insurance domain. Okay. So once we do that, I'm going to create a method even to go get that. So for now, we just created the way we did. But then in a minute, once it's running, we're going to create the method into another class. Okay. All right. So, and then this whole thing should be a method somewhere else, right? So just keep that in mind. We just got the driver part working, so we will make that change. Okay, so browser Chrome opened, right? If I did Firefox, it would open Firefox. You guys want to see that? Right here, I can say Firefox, and I just want to make sure I'm naming the same. Firefox, okay, that's good. And hopefully, finger crossed, as long as the driver manager works, it should work too. I don't know if I have Firefox on my computer. If I don't, then it will not work. Okay, so okay, that's it. So it says WebDriver blah blah cannot find Firefox binary in path. I don't have Firefox installed. I can verify that. Yeah, I don't. So if you do have Firefox, it will work, guys. So it's the same way. Okay, it should work as long as you switch. So now your task is actually, if you install Firefox, your task is now cross-browser compatible, meaning you can switch on demand which browser you want to run your task with. Okay, so now that we relocated the driver in any project, you're gonna see there is a utility class. It's called setup. Maybe it's called utility. Whatever is the name that they give, right? The class name can vary depending on who created, and they will then create a driver or browser in a way that it can be, switched. Also, there are some capabilities that driver has, right? So in the Chrome, just by itself, sometimes is not helpful. What if the other capability you want to add? For example, let's say you want to add, um, you know, the developer tool, right? So right after the Chrome driver is created and is open, the developer tool is not open. So there's capability that you can actually add. What if you want incognito Chrome, not a regular Chrome, right? So those capability can be added here as well before returning the Chrome driver. So the browser caps actually, depending on which browser, because it's different company, right? So Chrome and Firefox is not the same company. So the developers work differently. So you have to make sure the caps is applied individually, not for the whole thing together for your driver. All right, so now that we were able to run one of the tests and we did completely from scratch. So any questions before we convert this into a method? And we're gonna call that method here.
No.
Okay. Okay, so for now, I'm gonna create the method in here because we're inheriting this, but then we will, again, just keep in mind, we will move it for learning purposes. We'll just relocate this into a method. So the reason why we want to relocate this into a method is because maybe you can see that this method, this basically um, something that can be, again, like it's just a one-liner code, right? And it doesn't have to be a method, right? But in the cucumber step definition, you shouldn't be even using browser itself. Like you should be able to using you should be able to use that from the method itself. So let me just go ahead and create some structure to this project, right? So let's say we're talking about another class, okay, page object. And so this is the insurance demo, and this page is initially, let's say, I'm thinking about a name, right? And then let's see, I'm gonna just say simply page object, because you know why? Because once we deal with more complexity, we will add more pages. So page objects, for example. So in this class, I'm gonna create methods that will be used, but then this class will extend driver because driver has all of it, right? So I'm gonna try to relocate the driver somewhere to this package. Okay, move class test driver, and then we just need a package. So we don't have a package here. Blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's create one, I guess. Okay, before I can move that, I need to create a package. Utility, util, utils. Okay, so now I will move this one right there. Refactor and done, right? I just want to make sure that after the move, my test still working as it should. And then you may say, okay, wait a minute, you moved these things and you haven't done anything, right? So move driver to rest route. What the? Okay, 1 second, guys. Because now the location, everything changed when we made the move. Okay. Undo the package, undo the move for a second, and then we will see what's the deal. Test. Okay. So I'm just gonna create a directory here and maybe like do it this way. This is a completely separate. I want to see where is the red. What is red right now? This is fine. Why is this red? Okay. Okay, let me just go ahead and run this real quick to make sure I didn't mess anything up. Okay, so still running. I don't know why this is red, but this could be IDE still thinking what's going on, like what I did before. Okay, so we already have the page object class. We're gonna do the moving later. We may have to do within this structure right here, right? But we have to create folders, and that belongs basically to organize, right? So organization we can do later. We only have single files for now. So here I'm gonna say extends, right? Extends, and I'm gonna do driver. So here we're extending driver. The first thing we're gonna create is the driver in a object. So driver is gonna be driver lowercase is equal to driver. Sorry, new driver. Okay, so that's that. So now I can actually call what I need to call from the driver itself. So if I do public void, because this will just do some work for us, right? So I'm gonna say go to home page, right? That's like one method, and now go to home page will basically take a driver, right? It should take a driver as a method if we don't call it, but the driver is already here, so we basically don't have to worry about the driver itself. So there's few ways to implement this, right? So that's why if if we still want to be able to call driver from our step definition, like the way that we did, then we have to make sure that the page object actually takes parameters as a driver. But I think everything will go through page objects. So the driver should have access to um, page object, and then page object should be given access to step definition. So therefore, like we have this hierarchy that we're kind of building at this point. So you're gonna have to kind of redo this page object again to make sure it's working. But most importantly, go to home page will require for you to say, um, you know, let's say I'm gonna say web driver, and this is already a driver there. So I'm gonna say browser, just to make sure that we can now create a browser is equal to something, right? So we want the new Chrome driver. Oh, what am I doing? Okay. Okay, so since we already have that, so browser is equal to driver dot browser, and then you specify what you want, right? So Chrome, done. So now go to homepage will not only make sure that the driver is created, and then that driver is being shared among any others, method that will be created here in the future. So now just keep that in mind. And once that is done, the next thing is you want to get, right? So you can say browser dot get, right? So now you can say here, let's go ahead and get this specific. Was there any question? I just heard someone. Okay, so now that we got this public void, this is our method, and this just basically visits this page. I'm gonna go back to this, and we basically now have to say page object rather than, right? So page objects, because we're gonna call that. We don't really need to call the driver here because it's already being called. So I can just say page object is equal to this, and let's say page. And now I can say something like this, okay? I can say, I don't even need all of these things. Clean this up. I can say page dot go to home page. Let me fix this for a second. Okay. So notice like how this just took place, right? All you have to do is click on go to home page to see what the homepage method does, right? It opens up Chrome and then it goes to this page. So let's see if it works real quick. And all right, so it's working. Any question before we go any further with page object, guys?
No, it looks
Okay.
pretty clear.
Okay. So notice that how clean the step looks. So in your step, you should not have like browser or find this and find that. It should belong to the page, which is the page object. Page object is a class. You go inside of this, and now you get to see the browser do this and browser do that, right? So now similar to these, this is a common page object. But imagine you're working on a application which is really big. We're gonna have page object that's respective to the name of the page. So homepage will have its own class, and then login page will have its own class because there is a lot of methods that will be go ahead and belonging to each of this class. So we're gonna clean those up as we go in through different pages. We'll create them and kind of have the experience for ourselves. Now, the driver is a utility. We can choose to say, oh, we're going to put everything into a nice folder. So you can actually put the driver inside of a folder that will say utility or setup, right? And then similar to that, page object can belong to the folder that has the name page object, for example, right? So they know exactly where to go to find page objects. And within that page object, because this is a common class, it will have anything that belongs to. So obviously going into the home page is a common class because all of the, sorry, common method that will all of your tasks will use in order to go to the specific page. But if this was saying, okay, go to a specifically login page and enter, then we would create a login page object. Okay. So just keep that in mind. So we'll probably do that as we progress through this framework. I wonder why this is still upset. I may have to just remove cache. Okay, so now let me see. Invalidate cache. Okay, just gonna reopen. Just want to make sure that this ID just resets itself. Um, okay, it's no longer red, which is great. So now we go back to our page object, and now we can do a little bit more than just that, right? So what is the next thing we want to do? Okay, let me just get rid of the pre-existing frameworks. What is this? Okay. The next thing we want to do is that we want to click on get started. That's the first thing. Then once we click on the get started, we have, wow, they added new features. Anyway, so then we want to go ahead and click on boat insurance for today, right? Boat insurance. And that's it. So the method name will be very different. So for example, you go into your step definition first. Okay, this is where you're gonna click, and then you're gonna say given, and then you're gonna say end, or then whatever is the case, then I go to boat insurance page. All right. So if you do that, the next thing you need to do, let it index because it needs to recognize. And once you do that, you need to then create a step definition. And I'm just waiting for this index to finish because it's just restarted everything. And when we create it right here, okay, I guess we can start creating. It's gonna be very similar, but I was just gonna go ahead and do a dry run. So it gives us the template of how it should be. But if you were to create from scratch, you need to follow some convention, right? So imagine like all of your coworkers is following this convention, because why? When you create a step, this is the name of the step, right? And then every space that you have, you put a dash. That's the way that they are going, right? And you don't follow that convention, then it will really, really make you look like you're, you're doing something different, and everybody's gonna just suggest like, hey, can you just follow the same way, right? The same process. And that's one thing that everybody's gonna be trying for you to do. And it also doesn't look good because all of a sudden somebody comes into the team and kind of like messing things up, right? And they're not going to appreciate that. So you want to follow exactly what's there. If you create a new step, you want to make sure that you follow exactly what it is that you see. Okay. I'm just waiting for indexing. Why is it taking so long? Okay. What? Okay, there we go. Finally, it finished, and you can see that it's already upset. And if I run it, I can, like, the dry run is basically the one will give you, but I didn't even have to do the dry run this time, right? This time I could have just used the light bulb, right? Light bulb would probably give me the same exact results. So I'll copy this template right there. But if I use the light bulb, it will probably give me the same as of right now. Creates the definition, and I'll put it into my dev. And there we go. It actually has a different, it has a different way of doing it. But the light bulb actually gave you the right one. This is camel casing. In Java, they don't appreciate this more than this. This is how they want, right? Camel casing. So the first letter is lowercase, and everything else, every other word will have uppercase, just like this. Okay, I is lowercase and go to, that's in Java, like that's how they want to do, right? This is pretty much a convention that everybody else follows. So now we have that, but we don't have anything in our page. So we go into the page real quick and we create a new method. So we can say public void. And again, public void is because we don't have any return, right? We're just doing something. That's it. We're just doing something. So I'm just gonna say open boat insurance, right? So whatever I need for the boat insurance, and that's it. So now, what if I was to go ahead and use IDE for this? So can anybody stop me for this? No, nobody can stop me. So I can go in there, and this time I'll be a little bit different. I click on Selenium IDE and record a new test, and go ahead and put this as a name. Go ahead, put this as a start, and it's now recording. I will click on the get started one. Then I will click on boat insurance 2, and then I will make sure that boat insurance message right here is being checked. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and create an assertion, and I'm gonna say present, right? Or I can say text, that's it. And it will still check that it is there. Let me go back to my Selenium real quick and then say I'm done with my test. Okay, temp temporary, because I just need the code instead of writing it. And this is one idea that I'm giving you guys, but like I said, this will also give you how Selenium works, right? So now I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of say few things that we don't need. Click, 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 H1, we clicked on it, but we don't really need that, right? We don't need to click, we can go ahead and just check if it's working or not. So notice it's using link text, and I really, really like link text because if you're working with a link text is the first choice when it comes about doing the, you know, let's see, Java JUnit, that's what we need, export and temp test, and then I'm gonna go ahead and open this. Okay, so go ahead and open it, and it'll probably open up in somewhere here. And this is temp test. We don't need all this crazy stuff. So all we need is these 3 lines, guys. So notice like all this work for just these 3 lines that we could have just typed ourselves, right? So, but as a beginner, I guess as a starter, you might not know what is the best practice currently. So now you know the best practices by looking into IDE giving you the right things. So IDE can be used as needed, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and remove my temp test. Now I will come to my method and I paste this, and now it found the driver, but it's upset because remember, we want to use browser, okay? So we just have to say browser, browser, and browser, and we are all good to go. Okay. JUnit is still working. Okay, so we're all good to go. So now our step is implemented. I will just go back to here and I will say page dot something, right? Page dot go to home page, open boat insurance, and done. And now if I run it, and let's see what happens. Right? So it did the right thing. And we did it real quick. Like you see, one method was implemented. As long as you follow the convention, you don't have to just copy paste and put it into a flat file. You have to know how to take the information and put it in the right places. Even if you got a job today, I guarantee you, you can basically survive for the 6, 7, 8 to a year, or even 2 years if you follow this way to do it. But you might not have a lot of knowledge for you to go and talk about for another team, give them a demo and things like that, but you still be able to do your job. So this is alternative to writing your own steps when it comes about writing Selenium and Java and Cucumber, right? You still have to know, and that's why we're showing you everything from scratch because you have to know where things comes from. I could have easily created a framework and have everything set up and just send it to you to say, okay, set it up and then let's start running. But we're basically to make sure that how originated, it's somebody had to make a choice to say, okay, I want to name this page object and now, this will have this. So you still have to dig down into the code and see what exactly that you need for your test steps to make it work. So you'll have to do a lot of, reverse engineering and see how they wrote their current test case and go into the step itself and kind of do some digging before you write your steps. Okay. So now that we wrote this, let's go and complete the steps, right? So we did the boat insurance open, and then let's create maybe something more reusable, like more reusable. So what if you, okay, so say I go to boat insurance page, right? What if I wanted to make these as reusable as possible? I want to make sure that these step can not only open boat, but it can also open other insurances as well, because it has more than one, right? So now what I can do, I can just click in here, I can just open my method and I can say, let's take parameter, okay? There's two different things, or actually there's three different things. So I can actually parameterize all three, okay? So that way it will basically work for any of the steps, right? So let's not go to that complexity, guys. Let's create another step into showing you how to parameterize your step definition. So for example, first name, last name, email, phone number, and 5-digit zip code. So I can say that, and I enter something, right? Name, right? For example, first name, last name, something, right? This is one. Go ahead and create step definition. So notice it created two different string, argument one, first name. We go into our page object. The next thing is we can create public void again, because we're just entering information. We're not returning anything at all, right? So we can say fill out names, all right? Now this time is gonna take a arguments, right? A string first name, string last name. So we are passing on some arguments at this point. Here I can say browser, do something for me. Browser, find element by something, all right? In this case, we have to know what it is that we're using to find it. Okay, so first name is F name and then last name is, okay. So first name by ID, I believe we can use ID. Dot send keys, and I can say first name. That's it, right? We gotta do the same thing for last name, and it's pretty simple. I believe both have IDs. Yep, ID and then name. Okay, that's good. So now my method is ready to go. I can copy this. I can go back to my step definition. I can say I want to use this. I can say page dot this, fill out this method and string first name, and we don't have to say string because that is already an argument. And that's it. Now you go back in here and you can say David, right? So if I run it now, let's see what happens. Okay. So David Murray is done, right? Um, any question on this one? Everybody gets it because I'm gonna ask you guys if you don't ask me. Okay, so how is this value that we're inputting here is working? If I go in here, I don't see David anywhere here. I don't see David anywhere that is here. So who wants to explain?
I think because we give the string value here and we declare before that the first name will be a string.
Okay. Yeah, so basically, again, parameters.
Yes.
This method itself takes parameter, and then we have another method created in page that takes parameter and does something with it. These are just variables, but then the value is actually coming from here. So now I can just use these steps whenever, however, and wherever I need it, right? Whatever is first name, last name, I can always use this, reuse this step. So just imagine like your team is creating these steps, such a step like this, for the entire project. You may not even have to write new line of code, right? And that's where the beauty of the Cucumber is, where it's kind of really helpful. It's easy to understand and read. On the other hand, right? On the other hand, if you really, jump into a project where there is no Cucumber, then even these, it's a little bit readable to you because fill out and then you put first name and last name. So without Cucumber, it's gonna look like this. Okay, method. You just can only use method. Okay, so we entered the first name, last name, and we will do the same thing for our email, phone number, and the zip code and click continue and then verify that, right? So I can say something like, and I enter email and phone number. Email address can be also the same thing. And I will go ahead and click on this guy, the definition. So notice I'm not even doing dry run anymore because now it's doing the right thing. This only happens in the very beginning when you create your first class. Okay, so here it's going to be very similar, right? I'm going to say email is email and phone is phone. So I just rename these arguments so we can do it like this. I'm going to go back in here. I'm going to copy this because it's going to be easier for me to do it. I'm going to fill out email and phone number. Okay, find element, email and phone number is basically, I believe, let's see. Email ID is email, so, and then phone number is probably just a phone. Yeah. And that's it. So I may go in fast, but you guys already did this testing before. So there is no mystery here. Fill out email and phone number. It takes two arguments. One is email and the other one is phone number. That's it. Okay, so we got that. And the next one is zip code. Page dot something. We don't know that. So we got to go back and maybe add a new one. You still have to go in here. But notice like in the beginning, we did the IDE recording. You could have done the same thing if you weren't very confident, right? But at some point you want to get out of the copying, right? At some point you want to write it yourself. So if you do happen to start using the IDE to create your steps, you just have to know how they work and how you're going to plug into this framework. And then like at some point you're going to stop using it because it's going to be easier for you to just type in yourself. It's going to be easier for you to do it yourself instead of doing the IDE. So fill out zip. Okay. Oh, all right. So I don't mind if you happen to use IDE and all that stuff. Um, just keep in mind at some point you're going to be out of that, right? So at work you're going to be trying to create yourself because after some time you'll learn it and you'll probably be able to do it yourself. Okay. So let's run this real quick and see how that goes. I have too many browsers open, so I'm gonna try to remove some of them in the meantime. It's running. Okay. It's working perfectly, right? It's really not a huge difference. The only thing you're learning here, aside from the other frameworks, is that how to apply this cucumber layer and make your test more readable to you and everybody else. But also you're learning page object today, which applies to any framework, right? Page object is something that applies to any framework. So that shouldn't be a news, right? That shouldn't be something that is unique to this framework. It's not. This will be applied to any other frameworks as well. So notice like how we're creating all this, but then we have few things, right? If we go into this page object and you can see like these locators, right? So at work, we also remove the locators from the method and we put the locators in another class. And now you may think like, "Oh, this guy's just pushing it too much," right? I'm not pushing it is because when you have thousands of test cases and it really helps when you have the locators to be somewhere else. So that way, so you can take just this portion somewhere else, or you can just take this portion somewhere else. And we're gonna do that. And why we do that is because a few reasons. And one reason is that you're basically adding higher reusability now, right? So let's say, for example, get started. How many times we clicked on get started so far? All right. If we have other methods that go through the same flow, it will click on get starts again and again and again. So isn't it better we put it somewhere else located and then we just call it here? Yeah. And same thing goes for this and same thing goes for this, right? So H1 method can be somewhere else and we will just call it here. So we're going to do that. Again, today's class is not to complete a test case. We did as much as here, and then you guys can complete the remaining where you have to validate going to the next page. And we did this with our previous framework. But the next thing that we need to do, we need to relocate our locators. Okay. So that will complete the page object demo at this point, right? Where we have a locator that belongs to, a class. We inherit from that class. And this is basically going to be our action class at this point. This method is basically just action. And this is where we calling those action methods, right? To do something. So now, let's look at the page definition, I guess like the book definition of page object. Okay, let's look at Go 99. They're pretty updated. They do plenty of work. to make sure that content is always updated. So let's read for a second, right? What is page object model? Page object model is design pattern popularly used in test automation that creates object repository for UI elements. Okay, so we haven't get to that part yet, object repository, because yes, we actually did that. We did objects, we created some objects here, but we're going to create more on the locator side as well. So now this object repository will be used when needed instead of recreating them whenever we need to use them. There will be only handful of object into the application that you're testing. So if you just create them and put them separately, you can call them whenever you need and you can use them that way. And it's more efficient than having a lot of duplication in your code. So the advantage of the model is that it reduces code duplication, right? And improves the test maintenance. So if you remove code duplication, of course, it's going to be very much maintainable, right, in terms of your test automation. So just keep that in mind. Under this model, for each web page of the application, there should be a corresponding page class. Okay, so in an interview, when they say explain a page object model to me, right? And this is exactly, this line exactly states that, right? We create page class for each page of the application, and locator, action, and method belonging to that page, we put them to the corresponding pages. Any question, guys? Is that clarifies what page object model is? And obviously there are some example, and we we'll take a look at that, but this was done without Cucumber, right? Same thing, you see, driver.find element, which is here, and then later you'll see like they just relocated everything, you see? And now they are following page object. Let's see. As you can see, everything is relocated. So no question, everybody clearly understand what page object model is in Selenium. There's Page Factory. I think they're using Page Factory here, which is a library that we haven't implemented yet, right? But the idea is same, right? Is to reduce duplication and improve test maintenance, right? Each web page in an application. So whatever you're testing for work, that website is your application, right? So each page that you're going through. So for example, right now we're in this page. If you go next, that's another page. So each page, there are things, web elements belongs to those pages. As you can see, each page have web elements, guys. And those web elements will be having their own class where you're going to put them, so that way you can pull them whenever you need. So you kind of create a repository at this point. And this method that you create yourself will be a repository of those objects, so that way you can call them whenever you need to and make them use. So this one is not tied to anything at all. Fill out name is not tied to anything at all, because first name, last name can be changed at will at any time at the time of use. So anybody can use it, even if they have different names, or even if they have same names, they do have the choice to make the changes. So methods should not be static. Methods should not be written in a way where it cannot be used somewhere else, right? Because this method is very specific. It is only work for one single case. That's it. Then it shouldn't be a method. Method we create because it has high chance of reusing somewhere else. All right. How many people can get to this far? Do you think this is enough for the day, or we continue to do the next locator portion?
We can continue.
We can continue. Yeah.
Okay. So now the next thing we're gonna do is that we're gonna create locator class, right? And again, we're gonna probably put them into different folders. It doesn't really matter right now. So I'm gonna say just locators for now, right? I'm gonna name it just locator because we are still not dealing with specific page yet. And then when we do that, we're gonna go ahead and change the class name to be specific locators. But let's do that. So locators, and now we have this, right? So now in the locators, we have to inherit. Okay, locator is gonna inherit action, right? So let me just do that in a. I'm gonna rename this real quick, okay? So that way it kind of makes sense, and then we'll rename it again when we have the folders ready, right? So I'm gonna say action class. This is an action class. So I'm just writing. Think about for each page we're gonna have action and locators. So think about this is for common actions, right? And this is the locators, this is action, and then when we have actual pages where we say okay, log pages for step 1 page or step 2 page or whatever the case, we will have their own pages. So this is common again. Let's preview this. This is going to change that, do refactor, and then that's it. So we got the action, we got the locator. Locator is going to be inherited by action, right? Now the locator should inherit the driver, right? Because that's where we locate an web element, right? So the web element is being located by the locator. So then we can say extends driver, and we will do the same thing that we did with the action, right? So this is gonna be basically the same, very similar. So I'm gonna go and do that right there. So if I did this already, oh, we don't need this. Oh, no, this is fine. Okay. So now that we have this, I'm gonna say public. And I'm not gonna say void anymore. So public, I can say web element. Aren't we creating web element? So public web element, and I gotta give it a name. So let's say the first one that we're dealing with action, right? If I do public web element and I say the first name, so it's okay, get started link, right? So I'm gonna go ahead and copy this much. Get started link, right? So you can just go ahead and say return this guy, and that's it. So you're just returning this specific web element, and that's it. So now what I can do is I can go ahead and inherit this guy, locator guy, into the action, because that's the real flow. I can say now locator. And now all of this is not gonna work, so we're gonna fix it, right? Locator, and then I can just say we don't need this here. Okay. And we'll fix this. The browser still, I don't know why this ID is slow, right? So it should be already read by now. So now I can say locator dot what's the method that we just created? Get started link right there. Okay, so get started link is gonna be right here. So this is no longer is needed. So get started link, and then you want to say something like click, right? You want to click because you haven't clicked on it, right? So you can now say click, and that's it. Okay, that's how it's gonna look like. So your locator somewhere else, which inherits, which inherited by the action, right? And the action is being inherited by the step. So the hierarchy, remember that, right? So let me just go ahead and open up something to give you guys an idea. The page object model, at least, model when you create it and in at work. So the first thing is we got locators. Locators repository will, object repository will contain locators. So this is where we create web element. So we locate the web element. And then we have action. Action class will inherit the locator. So inherit spelling is probably not correct. Are you serious? How do I spell this? Inherit. Inherit is in H-E-R-I. Okay. In H-E-R-I. ITA inherit. Okay, inherits. That's good. So this inherits basically locator, and then what it does, it takes the web element and it says do something, right? An action. So it does some action like click, for example. So now you know for fact locator is being inherited by action. Lastly is step def. Step definition will then inherit actions. And then go ahead and add it to the step, right? That you're writing. The locator inherits what? Driver, right? Or setup, whatever is the case. Locators will always inherit driver plus any utility if there is anything, right? Before it can create. Inherits, okay. Okay, any question, guys? So now these three should be a folder, right? So these three should be a folder. Inside of the folder, it'd be like this, right? Now you create classes, right? It's gonna be, first one is gonna say home page locator. Then the second one, it should be like for same homepage, right? Home page actions, right? Or objects, whatever you want to name, but what is up to, it's up to you because you're the developer. And then you can say home page steps, right? Home P should be capital. And then obviously that will be Java, that will be Java, and that will be Java because all of them are Java classes, guys. Any questions? Any clarification is needed here?
No.
Okay, good. So let's now, this was the plan. We reorganize our framework now a little bit to make it better. So let's see, new, and I'm gonna go ahead and create the folder. Okay, so now folder should be actually outside file package. We can package. I just want to see package in terms of package accessing items within the package. We will have issues with access modifier. Okay, so let's start off creating a new package. So I'm gonna say locator. And then actions. And step definition, step def. Right, so now we have to move them to appropriate places. Tests will only contain your feature file, period. And then we have utility package, utils. So the only thing is, I just have to see if it works. Folder should be the one that we should create, but rather than, okay, 1 second. Okay, so locator. So let's move one at a time. And when we move that, we want to make sure we refactor so that way it kind of like, so file will be inaccessible from method, blah, 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 right? So do you wish to ignore? No. Show conflicts in view. Okay. So this becomes inaccessible because these are again, one package to the other. The information is not being delivered. I was hoping to create a folder instead. So let me see if I can.
It doesn't show us the folder option. I think it gives the directory.
Oh, okay, right there, yeah. So we can create the directories and okay, so let's do the actions first. actually locator first because that's the locator. And folders, we can rename it with actually like lowercase too. It doesn't have any sort of, so let's see if we refactor again. Refactor is the one that kind of helps, right? So I'm gonna go and put that folder inside of Java. Click refactor, directory already exist. Okay, so I'll refactor that. Okay, I'm gonna remove the old ones that we created first. Okay, so then we go ahead and where's our folder locator? Yeah, right there. Okay, so we got the locator. Oh, okay. Inaccessible. Okay, can't do that. Cancel. Okay, this was a class. 1 second. This is all right. Let me just delete this real quick. Okay, so that is a class. Okay, let me just get rid of this. I'm just doing some cleanup first before we can reorganize them. Right click this. So we got the classes package. If we can create another. So the idea is that we're calling the image inheriting inherit another class from another package. That's where the problem is, right? Because when we move things to package, so I just want to see, so package 1, package 2, that's fine. Okay, your problem is CP parameter compiler cannot find it. Okay. Okay, it's public anyway, so these are public classes. Why is it that we don't need this one? Okay, let's see. Utilities we created, which is outside. Move that into Java. Let me see. Do refactor. So it did the refactor without any problem. Wait a minute. Okay, so no, we still didn't even finish before. So before we do this reorganization, guys, we have to make sure that our test is still updated. Seems like our test is not updated, right? So meaning like if you go into your locator, we just created a single one, right? We have to do that all of them, otherwise we're gonna have a bigger issues in few minutes. So let's do that first. Let's go to the action class to make sure that everything is updated. So we did the get started link, it's fine. But then remember, like the IDE is not recognizing the fact that we're not inheriting um, the driver, right? The driver, I don't know how the driver is being called in here. So then we need another method to go into somewhere, like go to this thing, right? So we can just go ahead and go to the locator and create another public web element. So this one is probably not a public, it's going to be public void because we don't really need a return um, of the element. We just need to go somewhere, right? So go to, and I can say string, and I can say URL, right? Okay, that's that. Now I can say browser dot go get an URL. That's it, done. Okay, so simple as that. And then I can just go to my action, and I can say I don't need to even do this, right? Because that will be done at the level of locator, right? So you see the browser right there. It's calling an it's basically doing something. We have to basically do it here, right? So the browser um, creation is done through this guy, and then okay, so now it's gonna work, and then URL is already separated. So now I don't even need that. I can just say locator. I can say go to, and that's it, right? So you see locator go to this, and then we say locator and do this one. The next one is this one also before clicking. And then we create another locator for this guy. So web element, and read this time is the board insurance. Okay, so we take this and we just want to return this web element, right? That's it. So it will return the web element. And so let's go into this. Let's go to the action real quick and start changing it. Okay, so this one open board insurance up until there is going to work, but we still need to do this, right? So we can actually also do it more dynamic too. So for example, this one, the only difference between these two is that this one has like a first name and this one has last name. So I can do something like this, right? I can actually go to the locator and I can say something like public web element, and I can say like find element by ID, and I can say string ID, and then this, and I can just go ahead and provide the ID here. Okay, so now I can just go ahead and use this and go to the action. I can say locator dot this find element by ID, and all I have to do is provide the ID. So ID was first F name. So the reason why we doing this is because you have to keep in mind one thing is that this class is no longer going to have access to the driver, right? So we don't have browser access here. The browser access is actually on the lower level, right? So the method has to come from there. So you see the level of enforcement of the code. You cannot just write anything anywhere anymore because the different levels of access that you have at the different level of class. So here you only have locator. When you go to the locator and see what level of access it has on the locator side before you can even make start to translate this and make this work, right? So we see H1, this is what's gonna fail. We just missed that. We have to add that here. Go ahead and go to the locator and can still return h1 public. So this h1 is going to work for any page, right? So you can say web element find h1, right? Something like this, I guess. So then we do return and opening and closing right there. Okay, done. So now find h1 is the method that doesn't take an argument. You go back in here. Okay, let's see. So see the selector h1. Okay, so find h1 and you have to say locator. And then okay, find h1 and then you have to say dot to get text, right? And then you have to close this opening and you have to close it somewhere, correct? This is where you close. What? Okay, so locator. Okay, this is the parenthesis belongs to here. Get text belongs to here. Oh, okay, the whole thing together. Okay, so starting and this is where the end is. Okay. So now this is gonna work. So as you can see, we fixed this method, we fixed this one,
Do you keep
and now
assert or
do I what?
assert?
Yeah,
Assert.
assert has nothing. Yeah, assert has nothing to do with. Even if you want, you can have assert classes separately to say, okay, all the assertion will be here, and you'll then call those from here, there to here. But assert is already simplified. It doesn't need to do more simplification here, right? So in this case, you see, get find element by ID can be used here as well, right? So you see the level of usage that we getting, right? Reusing again instead of calling it again and again, right? So this, I'm just gonna remove that. And then this, I just gotta remove that, and that's it, right? And the last one is zip. It's all still using an ID, so all we have to do is this. And you just remove this extra one, and we're good to go. So we just basically see what just did, right? Every classes that we create, somehow we went back and modified to the lower level, right? So we have the very first basic lower level is this, right? In this level, we have access to the driver. Therefore, we can create a browser instance variable that can be used among all of the element locators. These are here, you will not see an action. It doesn't do nothing except for just either returning the element or just doing something for you, like getting something. When you go to the action, it takes all the locator objects using inheritance, and then it is doing something. So you see, it's going into places, it's clicking, and is basically verifying something. So action is just doing something. After that, if you go to my step definition, this is where you're just simply calling those methods, because again, those methods are those methods actually contains things, two building block. One is locator and the action. So it's completed already. Okay, let's go ahead and run it to make sure our test still working as fine after all of these changes that we made. And if it does, then this actually the entire hierarchy of the page object model. And so notice we took it from the flat, right, flat file to all the way down to the page object model. So everything is working as expected. What I should expect at least for the next class on Wednesday, I need you guys to be up to this much. Okay, so this video will be shared. See it over and over again, but this is going to be in-house custom page object model, right? Because there are other ways to do it. It really depends on the person who's implementing. So if I'm implementing this way, that's how I am implementing, right? So your manager, your QA lead can implement very differently, but the idea is the same. You don't have to be shocked. Like, for example, when you join a company and you go into the step and be like, what? I never seen Selenium has such a method called so go to homepage, right? Oh, wow, this is very specific. How can this happen? All you have to do, right click and show context, right? Or or Command B that will take you to the, or Control B, Command B, right? If you're Windows, Control B, it will take you to the code. And now you can see even here, what this method I'm not even recognizing because Selenium doesn't have it. So you do Command B again, and now you see, finally, you see Selenium, something more familiar. So that means everything else has to be customized, right? They created those methods so that way it is highly reusable, and therefore it's maintainable, and therefore it is the best practice. Okay, so this was your page object, guys. The only thing is left is that we have to make sure that, because it's going to be more actions, page specific actions, page specific locators, and page specific step definition, we just have to put them into the right locations, folders, right? So that way, that way the framework is pretty much complete. So at this point, literally, you can take this framework and you can make it usable in an actual project. The only thing is missing is the runner file. So we have to add a runner file. We may just add it here somewhere. But the next class, we're going to reorganize this. All right, we're going to create a runner file, and we may go ahead and create more page objects. But for now, I need all of you guys to get up to this much so we can move forward and make it more usable. Make this framework a bit more commercial ready, right? Actual project ready. If you look at the driver real quick, on the driver, you're gonna have more and more utilities depending on what you need. So notice, like, again, you can switch between drivers at will, right, at this point. But then this is probably still not the best practice, because here you have to input it directly into your test. But what if I was to say that when you run the test, you can actually specify what driver to run it from, and every single test will run from there. And that is called environmental variable. So we'll also learn that at the next class, because we can only make progress step by step. Otherwise, everything will just fly through in your mind. So, all right. So at least for the next class, just be up to this much. I want to see that you were able to do this much for the next class, and then we move forward. We will create a runner class in the next class, and after that, we're gonna then use the similar convention and coding standard to write more test cases. And lastly, I'm going to show you guys how to get your VCS up and running and create connection with your GitHub account. So that way you can not only use GitHub from terminal from here, or and for Windows users, you'll have a similar terminal like this. Let's see Git. I have Git here, Git status. So this doesn't belong to a GitHub repository. So we're gonna show you how to create, basically start pushing and pulling code, right? If you don't know how to push and pull code, the only problem is that you cannot deliver your work, right? So now you will be able to write test cases and you're not gonna be able to deliver work. So that will be the last thing. And we're gonna then, our final project will be also pushed and pulled from the GitHub as well when you write your code. That GitHub account you will be also using for work too, meaning like once you join a company and they don't give you the company specific GitHub account, you're going to be using that for your work. The other thing is that sometime in the interview process, they will ask you for GitHub account, and you can actually share that because you will have some work at least in your GitHub account. You'll have some code. Your final project will be there, so you can always say, I did that for personal development. I wrote this test cases as a demo, and blah, blah, blah. Right, so this will help on your portfolio, but next class, we're gonna reorganize. We're gonna then go ahead and write a few more test cases, and then I'm gonna ask you to write test cases, maybe 5 or 6. Once that is done, then we go into GitHub. Once GitHub is done, then we will do a revisit of Java and other things, whatever we have been, whatever is missing. And then we will probably start to think about going into the next phase. All right. The next topic is, I think, Jira, and then Jira is like a day, right? One day. If you didn't see the Postman yet, we're gonna do a Postman. It's also a one-day class. and then we can think about marketing. All right, so next class, I just want you guys to be up to this much. Do it yourself and make sure it works just like this, and then we'll be fine. And then, yeah, any question, guys?
So I have a question, right? For the
Mhm.
sequel, what we did, we just went to the W3 school and pretty much read everything. So can you, after all this, can you just show us one, like how we're gonna use SQL in our real life, for example, how we're gonna test the database?
Yeah, sure. So automation side, SQL is basically we use it directly in our framework, right? So we go to pom.xml, we find a driver, right? Database driver, okay? And then we add the driver here. So now the driver is able to connect to any database as long as you provide the right information like username and password. So now you got username and password from your company. Now you'll hook it up. Once that is hooked up, now you're going to be able to directly make calls to the database. The idea is that you may be able to add it here, right? In your action file. Like, for example, if you have a test case that you want to check existing user missing 10 payments, what kind of messages they are getting. Then in the database, because obviously you cannot have a user that missing 10 payments, right? For whatever reason, right? So you're going to be going here and you're going to basically DV connect whatever, and you're going to write a query to say, go into a user table and just go ahead and manually add 10 payment missed and give me the user information. Once you get the user information, you log in and you just go into the user profile and see what kind of message they're getting if they have 10 payment missed. So we will do a lot of modification of the backend data in order to make sure that we're efficient on the front end. Because here you can only just go through, you cannot have any sort of changes. Like, especially if your application doesn't allow you to make any changes from the front end, right? So you'll have to do it from the back end. But sometime you added, let's say, David Murray here and click continue. You want to write a query in the backend to see David Murray was entered or not in the database, right? So these are some things that we'll be doing with automation. I'll show you guys how to connect the database. And we can probably go from there, but this will be real case scenario, right? Where we use database for automation. It's a one-time setup, right? So if you join a company today and you did the setup today, that means that setup will probably stay for as long as the application is there, right? So 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. You may even forget how you set it up initially, right? So it's not a everyday work, right? It's just something that you set up once in the very beginning, and then you're done. You continue to get the benefit from that setup. Okay, so we'll do that. I'll probably show you guys. I'll probably like not go too much in depth because that is a nice to have, meaning it's not required. Not all the framework will have access to database, and some companies will restrict you from database access anyway. But we'll look at it. But just know that you need to have basic queries, like how do you find a table? How do you find data from a specific table? How do you narrow down to the data that you're looking for? Those are the interview questions. In the interview, they will never say, okay, tell me like connect a database and things like that. All right, guys. So any other questions?
No.
Question. Just a reminder, please add us to the another batch so we can.
Yeah. So I will say for you guys, start joining because it is going to be quite enjoyable because number one, you already did some of this stuff, and second, you get to hear second perspective, and third, this is a revisit, so it'll make you only stronger for your upcoming journey to the marketing.
Or can I get the classes we missed, the recording, so I can go over the videos like the last two, 3 classes, probably.
Yeah, so last 2 classes were just very introduction, right? I don't think it's going to be much use for you guys. It's just introduction, right?
Sure.
Once you join the class, once you join that specific group, just go ahead and ask, and somebody else can share because it was shared already in the same group, the
Okay,
recording.
no problem. Sure.
Yeah.
Thank
So
you.
we'll add you guys to that group, and then you can just ask from there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank
All
you.
right, I'll see you guys on Wednesday. Enjoy your weekend, guys.
You too.